Hello guys, yes, I am wearing my dressing gown. Ignore it, because I don't know why, I feel like I look like some sort of housewife that's wearing makeup and then is wearing a dressing gown, but I'm cold and I just finished filming a video. That's what I put makeup on. Well, actually I put makeup on because we were supposed to be going out for this surprise that my boyfriend had booked, but then he just came through like half an hour ago and was like, yes, I was just checking everything and it's for the 12th of March, not the 12th of Feb. But never mind, that's a very boyfriend thing. Like, it's a very normal thing for my boyfriend to do. But I'm still excited because he told me what it is. It's like the National Scotland Poetry Slam thing that's going to be going on next month, and that'll be really exciting. But I wanted to do a reading vlog based on this book. Also because I'm going to an event at the end of Feb where Hanya will be speaking. So I thought it'd be nice if I can, like, I won't film the whole event, but it'll be a nice little bit of a tie-up, and then maybe we can do an end of review about the book and the event as well. I don't think I'll be finishing this book by the time the event happens. What's the date today? Today is Monday's the 14th, 13th. Today's the 12th of Feb, and the event's on the 22nd, so that's what, 10 days? Yeah, I'm definitely not finishing this book in 10 days. Do you know what? I might. Because I'm sure it took me 9 days or 10 days to finish A Little Life, and I don't know if this is the exact same page number. This might actually be shorter than A Little Life, so guys, I might actually be fine, who knows. So yeah, I'm going to read this and we can read it together and then check in and give you my thoughts. So this is actually, my friend Rachel lent me this copy. This is a proof copy that she got. I think if I wasn't being lent this, it would have taken me a while to get to this. I really liked Little Life. Like, I read A Little Life before I started on BookTube, before, like, you know, I would have blogged up my Goodreads and stuff, but before I was ever into any sort of, you know, reading content. I really enjoyed it, and then also joined BookTube, and I could see there was such a divide about this book, and I reread it in 2019, I want to say, to see what I would think of it based on the fact that I'd listened to like loads of other people's reviews, like here and there, because one of the things was the fact that it was just like trauma porn and stuff like that, and I was like, yeah, there is quite a lot of trauma in there. So I reread it thinking that, you know, I would see all these people's points. Well, I reread it, I was like, I still like this book. My only complaint the second time around was actually, I feel like for a book that was, you know, in the beginning focused on 4 men, you know, it went to being about Jude, and actually I just felt like we never really knew Jude that much. We knew Jude from other people, and there was this whole thing about Jude being a really great, you know, cutthroat lawyer, and it's just like the Jude we saw wasn't that, and I would have liked some more courtroom scenes with him, but that was my only complaint. The trauma, yeah, it was a lot, but hey, some people go through a lot in life. Just be glad it's not you. This book is quite different, and so I think it would have taken me a while to get to it, but I do enjoy her writing, so that is the reason why I would have definitely picked it up. Yeah, I don't have much more to say. So yeah, that is why I guess naturally I wouldn't have picked it up so soon after the pub date, because yeah, it seems it published in January this year. But yeah, we're going to read it and see. I need to actually read, okay, no, the blurb is actually in here. So yeah, I need to reread the blurb again, but oh, why don't we just read it together? It's quite long though, I'm not gonna lie. In an alternate version of 1893 America, New York is part of the free states where people may live and love whomever they please, or so it seems. The fragile young, what is this word? Of a distinguished family resists betrothal to a worthy suitor. Okay, so when you're like betrothed, sorry. I don't know why I said it like that. Drawn to a charming music teacher of no means. In 1993 Manhattan, besieged by the AIDS epidemic, a young Hawaiian man lives with his much older, wealthier partner, hiding his troubled childhood and the fate of his father. And in 2093, in a world riven by plagues and governed by totalitarian, I don't know, rule, a powerful scientist's damaged granddaughter tries to navigate life without him and solve the mystery of her husband's disappearance. These 3 sections are joined in an enthralling and ingenious symphony. Recurring notes and themes deepen and enrich one another. A townhouse in Washington Square Park in Greenwich Village, illness and treatments that come at a terrible cost. Wealth and squalor, the weak and the strong, race, the definition of family and of nationhood. The dangerous righteousness of powerful and revolutionaries, the longing to find a place in an earthly paradise, and the gradual realization that it can't exist. What unites not just the characters but these Americans are their reckoning with the qualities that make us human: fear, love, shame, need, loneliness. To Paradise is a Findy, don't know what that means, novel of marvellous literary effect, but above all it is a work of emotional genius. The great power of this remarkable novel is driven by Yanagihara's understanding of the aching desire to protect those we love, partners, lovers, children, friends, family, and even our fellow citizens, and the pain that ensues when we cannot. No. Okay, we're about to but we're about to embark on a journey. So yeah, let's start reading and see what we think. I think I'm actually going to do a bit of video editing now, but I will probably do a bit of reading later in the day as well. I'm not really sure what the lighting is looking like, but today is Monday. Happy Valentine's Day, guys. You know, hope you're celebrating, enjoying, doing whatever you're doing. We're not doing anything today. We did go and see Death on the Nile yesterday, and then we went for dinner at this really nice steak place. That was our sort of Valentine's Day treat. I say my Valentine's Day treat. You know, the whole Kenneth Branagh, Agatha Christie verse, it's not for me. I watched Murder on the Orient Express and thought, what was this? But you know, they had a killer cast in terms of just like very famous names, and this time they haven't gone with so many famous names. I really liked Emma Mackey, I want to say, the girl from Sex Education, as Jacqueline, I want to say. I've already forgotten their names, but everyone else I was like, why have you been cast in this character? Like, everyone else was so forgettable and just not great. And just, I don't like some of the direction he's taken, but fair play to him, that's the direction he wants to take. I am very interested to see where I can't remember the name of the director now, who does the film for Knives Out. We watched that maybe about a month ago, very thoroughly surprised by how much we both enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it on two levels, like just as a film, like if I didn't have any like knowledge of Agatha Christie, I really enjoyed it because it had some really good twists and turns. But then I could just see so many of like references to Agatha Christie and how he'd just taken it and adapted it to modern day. So I'm so intrigued to see what he does next with like the second film, and I think it's due out late 2022, but I think that's going to be in the United States. So it's going to roll out to everywhere else probably like early 2023, which is a shame, but I'm willing to wait. But I want to talk to you about this. I'm only checking in today because I've actually now read a significant chunk. I'm on page 125 now, whereas on Saturday, I think when I started it, I got to page 50. And honestly, I wasn't going to check in because not much has happened. We've met this character named David. He is the rich, is it Sion? I don't know what it was called, but I had to Google that word because you saw me read it in the intro and be like, I don't know what that is. But we're following David and we're learning about his family and how he lives in the Free States within the United States, and that also means that like gay marriage is legal. It's not punishable, where it seems that it is punishable outside of like the Free States that he lives in. And at the moment, oh yeah, I had to say this before I carry on with this vlog, this is not going to be a spoiler free like sort of reading vlog. We're reading this together. I am going to talk about the book as it goes along, so if you're interested in reading this, I would not watch this vlog, because whatever happens in here, I'm going to talk about it just as it's happening. So we're following David. At the moment he's met Charles, this older man who's interested in him as kind of this arranged marriage that his granddad has set up for him, or his granddad's secretary, and she has actually set up arranged marriages, sort of ish, more like introductions really, for his younger sister and brother. His sister is married to another woman, his brother is married to another man. I don't think that's the way it always goes. It can be man or woman, it just so happens in this family that's what it is. And David himself has also started to like another guy named Edward, who is a guy who's a music teacher in his school. David teaches art at this school that his grandfather basically started, and it's for like refugees. So he meets him and basically they begin to like sort of seeing each other, but he doesn't actually tell anyone, and at the same time he's being courted by Charles. And we are just reading basically about David spending his time with Charles and then with Edward, and he's leading Charles on. And the bit that I have gotten to really is, it all comes to a little bit of a head. Edward has asked him to basically like go away with him, but the threat there is if they leave the sort of free state they're in, them being gay is essentially punishable by death. But also Charles is a bit like, we've been seeing each other for a while, we've been sleeping with each other for a while, like are we going to marry or not? And David is just a coward basically and is super scared and doesn't want to say anything. So yeah, I really feel like not much is happening, but what I am struck by is how beautiful this is written. Like, there are just so many lovely parts. This is what I mean by she's just a brilliant writer. Just the way she's writing some of these bits, I'm like, this is so beautiful. And it's just a joy to like go through the journey with David because the writing is so beautiful. you can't fault it. You're reading it and you're just like, this is a nice pleasant journey that I'm on. I don't really care that much about David and his life, if I'm honest with you, but I'm enjoying how it's being explained to me. So for example, one bit of writing that I really just enjoy, this is a scene where David is actually talking to Charles, but he's talking to Charles and he's thinking of like sort of comparisons between him and Edward, between Charles and Edward, and he says here, if he could not have Edward in his arms, he wanted Edward's name on his tongue. By speaking of him, he would bring Edward alive. He wanted to show him off, wanted to tell anyone who would listen that this was who had chosen him, that this was who he spent his days with, that this was who had brought him alive once again. And on its own, I don't know how nice that sounds, but following David and knowing the kind of character that David is, you really, like, I don't know, you really get a good sense of who David is. Like, he just feels very proud to have been chosen by someone so exciting, because in comparison, his life is very mundane, his life is very sorted for him. There's no sense of adventure, there's no working to get all the money that he needs because he already has it. And I guess really the really nice thing about here is the way she talks about love and the sort of reasons why you don't choose someone versus why you choose someone else. And well, it's quite bad in this book because he is comparing, but you can just see that passion there. And I think her explanation of just what love is, what that feels like, how that makes you feel, all of those things, it just shines through so much in this book. So I'm really enjoying it for that sense. But like I said, ain't much happening. So I think one of the next stages that we're kind of waiting for is whether or not David does go ahead and go out into the big old bad world with Edward. Personally, I don't think David should. David, you couldn't handle the outside world, you should just stay and pick your life with Charles. But it's one of those things where he knows if he stays with Charles, he's sort of going to be limited to a life of just mundane routine stuff, whereas if he goes with Edward, his life could be exciting, which, you know, is fine, but David, you can't handle exciting, so you better sit your ass down. But that's where we're at right now. Hello guys, so it is today is Sunday, don't know the date, I actually think it's the 20th of Feb, so the event is in 2 days. Have I finished the book? No, I've not, of course not. But I have finished the 2 sections. So when I last checked in, I didn't realise, oh my god, I've just edited like the 2 clips together that I filmed. Whew, in that second clip I'm like, oh, you look so tired and dishevelled. I mean, I'm tired 99% of the time, but whew, I don't know if it's just a contrast from the first clip, just because I had makeup on and whatnot. And then that clip, and I was just like, I don't know how I'm faring today, but anyway. So in that last clip that I just filmed, I was actually quite close to the end of like that section. So this book is split into 3 sections. As I read in the intro, like there is an 1893 version of New York, and then there's a 1993 Manhattan, and then there's 2093. So I was nearly finished with the 1893 section, didn't even realise it finished, and I was just like, oh my god, this is actually quite emotional. I wasn't expecting it to end there. We don't get to really find out what David's decision is. It just ends with, like, you know, he steps out to Paradise, and I don't know, the way it was written kind of made me think actually maybe David just stepped out on his own. He shafted Edward, he shafted Charles, and was just like, I'm gonna go on an adventure of my own. But we don't ever get to find out what his decision is. It's not concrete. I don't know, I'm pouring out my face with the hair. Okay. So then the second section is apparently in 1993. Manhattan besieged by the AIDS epidemic. I will say there is talk of men and gay men, especially because the character in this second section is a gay man, you know, dying of AIDS and sickness and stuff, but there's not a huge focus on it, which I'm happy about. There are plenty of books that talk about the AIDS epidemic between men, or rather the effects on men specifically, and yeah, this one didn't need to be that. So but if you're looking for something that's going to focus on that, this is not going to be the one for you. And what the themes that are running through this is essentially the same characters, but not really. They're in some way sort of like, I wouldn't say like parallel, but they're not even that really. So in this second section, the second section is actually also split into 2 sections, which I didn't know until I started reading it. But we start off with another guy named David, and a letter arrives from him, and basically we find out he's a paralegal. His boyfriend is named Charles and he is like a lawyer at the firm, and it just basically starts to talk about the backstory of their life, how they met, what they do now. they throw a party for one of Charles's old, oh, there's quite a huge age gap between David and Charles in this one, like there is in the first one. But in this case, this David is Hawaiian. I don't know if the other David was Hawaiian. I'm pretty sure he wasn't, but this David is Hawaiian, and that has huge, like, sort of significant impact later in the story. But yeah, there's a huge age gap between him and his husband. His husband is very, very rich, and he has loads of older friends, and yeah, a lot of them are sick, some of them aren't sick, but in particular one named Peter is dying, but he hasn't got AIDS, and Charles himself actually has AIDS. And yeah, they have a very brief conversation about it, but like it's very brief and very insignificant, and I really like the way it was handled. But yeah, so one of their friends, Peter, is dying, they're holding a party for him, and like people are saying bye to him, whatever. And then like there is, I say whatever, there's a lot of depth and like meaning to that part of the story. Can't tell us that interested, especially because we're hearing it from David's perspective, so he's not really that close with the friends. If we were hearing it from Charles' perspective, it would have been a lot more emotive, but nevertheless, whatever. So it gets to like the end of the chapter, and you know, this letter that David has received. When I say the end of the chapter, there's a whole loads of ins and outs that it goes into. I'm not really going to go into that, but the letter that David receives, he finally decides he's going to read it. So he goes down to read that letter when Charles is asleep. It's clear there's something about his past that he hasn't actually told Charles. So he goes down there, and then Charles finds him downstairs, like in the other room, reading letter. He's asleep, and he says to him, like, you know, my friend Peter has passed away. I didn't actually say this about Peter, but he was planning on going to Switzerland to get euthanized, but then he went home from that party and died anyway, so, you know, nice natural death for him, whatever. And so yeah, he was like, the phone rang in the middle of the day or the night or whatever, like it's the early hours of the morning actually. He was like, but I noticed you were in bed, so I came here and I saw you sleeping, and I saw this letter on your chest and I read it. Like, why didn't you tell me about your dad? But it ends there in quite a nice moment where they're just kind of like, you know, we're in this together, we'll figure it out. And so then we come into the second part of that section, and it's actually I assume, the letter from David's dad. My God, if this letter is as accurately long, like if this is the letter he actually wrote him, I can 100% believe this guy fell asleep. Like, I can 100% believe it took him ages to read that letter and then he fell asleep. Because it's long in the book. It goes from page 257 to page 357. The longest letter ever. And you know, you're reading the beginning bit, you don't know how long the letter's going to be. Reading it, and I'm just like, as I kept on reading, I was probably 25 pages in where I was just like, this is annoying simply because of the format it is told in. If you want to write this long letter, but actually the story that's contained within the letter is, okay, so his dad, we have to think about, his dad is explaining his current situation now, and then also recounting to us as the reader the past. But in the letter, he's explaining all of these things as if his son doesn't know these things, and obviously there are bits about his own life that his son will not know. But I just feel like this was the wrong format to tell us, the reader, the story. Perhaps we should have got the letter and then also a section from his dad where he recounts the past, because I was just like, why would you be writing all of this in this long ass letter? In this section, again, I don't want to like deep dive into it too much, but this is very much to do with Hawaii and again sort of free states and, you know, being brought into America. But essentially, David's dad, who's also called David, is like the prince of Hawaii in some sense. His dad was actually, or no, his grandfather was technically the last person in his family to be called prince. And his dad is just kind of an awkward kind of person, kind of bullied at school, kind of lonely, didn't really make any friends. But in this scenario, again, his dad, David, meets an Edward. And again, he's captivated by this Edward, but not so much in the same sense. In this sense, they're just actually friends, they're not lovers or anything like that. But again, this Edward is a strong character. And his dad basically just goes on to say, talk about his life, how he met Edward and all of those things and what happened, and actually how like David came to be, which I thought was quite interesting because I actually really didn't consider who David's mum might be. I just for some reason assumed she passed away. He talks about like, David talks about his mum, but that would be the grandma of the David in the first section, not like the first section of the first part in the second section. It's just getting so confusing. And then what the crucial part that he talks about really is how, and then what he talks about is how father and son, like, you know, became separated and no longer talk to each other. And honestly, I was reading it, I was just like, this dad's kind of wild. Like, I don't know why his dad decided to do what he did, why you decided to take your son out from the nice home he had to go effectively camp in the middle of, like, do Bear Grylls because Edward asked you to, because he convinced you of your lineage and how, you know, apparently as a prince you have to live like some sort of pauper. I don't know why you took your 11-year-old son to be on this journey with you. So he explains how all of that came to be. And then, like, his dad is clearly in some sort of institution, I want to say. There's something wrong with his eyes. He's, like, he is there, but I think he has a lot of guilt over what happened, so he tends to, I want to say, have tantrums. He just gets easily overwhelmed essentially and starts like fighting people, not fighting as in like punching them, but you know, he starts hitting himself and people have to like restrain him. So his dad is clearly in some sort of institution and like he can't see and he can't walk actually as well. So that is really the effects of what happened during the like sort of 5 years that he was essentially camping out in this random place in Hawaii with Edward. It's also random and I'm just like, how did we get here? And also, my issues with that section is I feel like we don't get enough explanation of how like enticing Edward is. I just don't believe the Edward that we saw on the page could convince that David to do what he did. I'm just not really sure what transpired between them that actually effectively allowed David to want to take his son with him. Like, I understood if he wanted to go, but I'm just like, what was there for your son that you thought that was so great? And I just don't know what Edward said to him. It wasn't really apparent on the page. I didn't feel like Ed was that convincing enough and that charming enough that David would do that. So yeah, from the ages of like 11 to 15, his son is basically like either staying with him in this like remote place, like it's so remote, like his grandma and other people come to the rescue and they end up building a house and stuff like that. But it's all just a bit random and a bit much, and I was confused with the length. I just thought it was way too long. I was confused with the format. This shouldn't have been told in a letter format. It was just ridiculous. I was confused as to how we even got here. Why? It was just too long and sentimental overall. Yeah, I honestly think that's probably like the worst section that I've read. I was messaging my friend Rachel and just being like, why is this letter so long? And I hadn't even got to like halfway at that point. So that section was a bit of a dud. So I'm at the final section and yeah, I'm going to start reading the rest of that section tonight. And it's good that I've gotten to this section because, you know, in case there are any spoilers during the event or anything, at least I will have like finally reached the final section and I can find out what's going on. The final section is split into quite a number of sections as well. So it'd be good to see how the characters are reimagined here. Her writing is really strong. There's a lot of wonderful themes that she talks about, and a really central theme here is race, but in terms of being Hawaiian. And I just think it's so interesting. They obviously talk about black people in America, but you know, with them being Hawaii, it's like there's even the talk. They're just like, well, there are no black people in Hawaii, so like, why is this a thing for us? But it's interesting to see them fighting their own race battles and how they've been sort of colonized by America and how that's starting to infiltrate, and how people are, well, say people, the people on the fringes are starting to like sort of fight back. So yeah, there are loads of interesting themes in here. I think she's taking on a very big undertaking. The book is a very large undertaking, and I don't know, she's doing a lot, and I think she's doing some of it well, some of it I'm a bit like, but she's making me think, it's prompting me on things. You know, like I said, as she's talking about the sort of uprising of Hawaiian citizens who want to preserve the cultures of Hawaii and things like that, I'm like, I've just never even really considered any of that, mainly because I've like never been to Hawaii and I've been to one state in America, but it's nice to learn about something else, even if it's through fiction, because I imagine a lot of it is based on facts as well. So it's interesting to see all the different things that she is tackling. Be interested to see how the next section goes, because if it's in 2093, I imagine we'll perhaps get some science fiction elements in here. I don't know, but it'd be interesting to see what the reimagining is of all the characters, because this section talks about a powerful scientist's damaged granddaughter, and so far our main protagonists have been male, so we'll see.
This is a film student who's taken the burden from me, thank you, of casting a little life. But I want to hear, and you asked who I would cast. Who would you cast?
I have no idea. I've got everyone else apart from Will.
Who are the other three?
Jude is Rami Malek.
Okay, Jude for Rami Malek for Jude.
The other ones are quite.
Oh, he's opening a notebook.
Brother Luke would be Kevin Spacey.
Oh my God! Okay, that's a little too close to the bone. Brother Luke would be Kevin Spacey. Who else?
Auntie is Mahershala Ali.
Andy's Mahershala Ali.
Good idea. Would be Armie Hammer.
Caleb would be Armie Hammer. Clearly you never want this to get funded.
And then the rest are just like random people who...
Right, other sex criminals. I thought about this a lot because A Little Life has been rejected by every single network, streaming service, and studio in the United States and in the UK. Not quite the UK, but they don't have any money. So, but you know, there was a writer's room that when we were going to sell A Little Life as a series, and the other three writers, all of them were great guys, were all playwrights, and so they really knew actors, and we talked about it at length because we wanted to make sure that the roles were, that we were offering really good roles for these people. And they did say, by the way, they said you should, these are all playwrights, they said you should always cast British actors because A, they're classically trained so they never change a line. I don't know if any of you are actors in here. B, they're cheap. And C, they'll all do full frontal. Okay, so who I would cast David Strathern as Harold. Do you guys know who he is? No. He was in Good Night and Good Luck. You're too young for this. I would cast Jeff Daniels as Dr. Traylor. I would either cast Jake Gyllenhaal, or you guys don't even know what it's going to be yet. Or who's the other? Or oh my God, I think he might be Scottish. The guy who was in The Americans. Do you know who I'm talking about? Matthew Rhys. He's not. He's Welsh, right? Okay, thank you. Matthew Rhys as Brother Luke. I was told that he won't take characters who make him look bad. And then for the boys, I would either say Jovan Adepo or Nathan Stewart Jarrett as JB. Do you guys know who these people are? Yeah. Nathan Stewart Jarrett was in the revival. He's a stage actor mostly. He was in the revival of Angels in America, and he's British. Jovan Adepo was in Fences. The movie with Denzel Washington was also in The Watchmen. They're both great. I would do Charlie Barnett, who's a young American actor as Malcolm. I would do a young theater actor named James Kusati Moyer as Jude. He's in that horrible Inventing Anna series right now. And the person I really wanted for Willem, but I think he's aging out, is James Norton. Ooh. What do you think?
What you've done here is you've set up the perfect post-event chat in the bar. Like,
I know. But thank you, and thank you for your very controversial chat.
Hello everyone and welcome to what is the final section of this reading vlog, because I have finally finished To Paradise. So I haven't really checked in since I think I was in like the middle part of the second section. I just went ahead and read the third section and just didn't check in. So I'm going to include clips from when my friend and I went to see Hanya talk about her book. She only talked about it very briefly. I'm sure it was like an hour in total, and that included people asking questions. I feel like they spoke for half an hour. Yeah, my friend very kindly recorded a really funny section when someone asked a question about who she would cast for a film for A Little Life. But my friend commented that it'll be, I haven't put the clips in yet, but it will just be me talking over the clips going, who is that? Because she was naming all these actors and I didn't have a clue who they were. So I finally finished this. I'm not gonna lie, guys. Straight off the bat, I'm gonna say, if you didn't like A Little Life, I would probably give this a shot, because this is not A Little Life. Like, there is no real trauma porn in here, as people like to describe A Little Life as. So if you didn't like A Little Life, honestly, I feel like give this book a shot and see what you think. This is no A Little Life, and this is fine for me. I'm not trying to judge it based on A Little Life or compare it to that. It's a completely different story. She's not like, you know, the author Jodi Picoult. I used to read a lot of her when I was a teenager, and I feel like Jodi Picoult wrote the same kind of stories, just always in like different sort of shock horror or moral compass. You know, like, would you take the heart of the person that killed your husband? You know, those really sort of things that are based on, oh wow, like, should I take that? This person killed my husband, but I need to live, so should I take their heart? I feel like that is one of her storylines. But Jodi Picoult, I felt, wrote along the same sort of lines, and I just grew out of reading her, in all honesty. So yeah, like, Hanya is not like that, obviously. In all honesty, this book is a 2.5 star read for me. I need to stop saying in all honesty, but it is a 2.5 star read for me because I just got to a part where I was just like, I wish this book would end. This book is so long and I actually genuinely am not caring about what's happened. The first section by far was my favourite. It was the most intense, it was the most emotive, it was the place where I felt like her writing really shone. And I feel that she's one of those writers that really knows how to write about the human condition and how to convey emotions of love, separation, wanting, friendship, all those sort of things, that the emotions that come with those sorts of relationships. I think she's great at that. And, you know, she does that in the second and third section, not as well as I think, but she does do that. I think in her, when we went to see her, she spoke about the fact that the first section was sort of based off of something by Henry James. I have never read that, so I don't know. But there is a bit of reference for you if you want to know what the inspiration was behind that. What I will say is, one thing I didn't notice, and again is what came up when we were seeing her, was that each of these books are marked by sickness. I didn't really realise in the first section, like, the main characters, like parents, die of what they just call the sickness, but it's just mentioned so briefly because the parents aren't really like a focal point. The fact that they died isn't really a focal point in the story at all. But in the second section, they're talking about AIDS. Again, not that in depth compared to like the third section where they are talking about a pandemic, and it's, you know, an illness that is coming back like in the 50s, 70s, and I think it comes back in 85 as well. So it's quite current. It's, you know, this society, well, this New York and sort of Washington Square area is the theme that's running through each three of the books. Is set in the same area, but this society has been, in particular I guess New York, but I guess this will be America as well, has just gotten so used to it, but it's allowed the government to like put in all these strict rules. There is no internet, there's no TV, there are no books. I think people can go and see things like orchestras and stuff like that, but there are no theatres. You know, things have been totally shut down, and that is to stop people trying to, I suppose, like, overthrow the government and the rules that they've put in place. But on the other side, the government have put all these things in place because these pandemics kept coming back. People kept dying. Children were being completely wiped out, and people who obviously had their children wiped out perhaps weren't as motivated to have more children because their children were just dying. So the government, the state has very much like mandated that, you know, men and women have to have children, and people who have children are given like more benefits by the state. Homosexuality is basically made illegal. I mean, it's not, but married couples are favoured. And yeah, it's an interesting one. So when I talked about the second section, I spoke about the fact that it was a very, very long letter. Perhaps I misspoke, but also I didn't, because the third section is very much told in the series of letters, but then also from the perspective of another character. And it flips between letters from this character's granddad to someone named Peter, and then we also have sections from this character, Charlie, talking about her life in the present day. I don't really want to talk too much about it because it's honestly kind of boring. It's very uninteresting. Her grandfather is just talking about his life with his husband Nathaniel and their son David, and how their son David basically doesn't listen to them and he sounds like a little shit, and he obviously joins some sort of rebellion, which is sort of against what his father, the narrator of the letter, is doing. His father is very much working on the pandemic and sort of is the one that sort of comes up with the idea of these camps to house all the sick people. And his son David is very much against them because what that's doing is tearing families apart. I think eventually they decide that actually fine, if you've got one person that's ill, the whole family can go with them. But obviously this just ends up wiping out families. So that's what happens in their time in those letters. And he just writes these series of letters from like, I think it spans from like 30 to 50 years or something like that. Not really too sure. And in present day, his granddaughter Charlie is talking about her life and what life is like for her. She goes to this lab that she works in. It does something to do with mice. talks about her husband who is gay, and like her granddad set up this marriage for her, but knowing obviously that he was gay, so therefore like he would never be violent with her, he would never hurt her. Yes, he may never love her, but she would always have someone. It's actually a nice section they have in there that she would be lonely, but she would never be alone. So that's what happened. And then one day, another David starts talking to her, and basically it's like her granddad had set up a failsafe for her so that she would be able to get out of this country. And that's where the sort of book ends. The book ends where she is making that escape, and she's in a boat. The tarp is pulled off from her, and someone's saying you, and she doesn't really know if like who's talking, if it's the person on the boat that she's on is talking to her. There's another boat that's drawn up beside them, and if it's that person talking to her, but the tarp is pulled from her, and that ends her section. And then the final section is the letter from her granddad. Honestly, I would have just liked to know what happened to Charlie. I don't want to have to wonder if she got caught and now is going to be is going to be executed, because that's what happened to her granddad. Her granddad got executed. Not even really caring or sure why. I mean, I know why he got executed, but it just seemed like the side that he fell on, I was like, I'm not really sure why they would execute him. He does explain in the last letter that it is sort of a what's the word he uses? So he uses the word a sacrificial lamb. So yeah, and then like you find out in Charlie's present day that actually, you know, he's charged with these crimes, but like 3 years later he's cleared of them, but obviously he did, so that doesn't matter. And it's not like the state that she's living in now with him being cleared, it gets her any more benefits. It does not. So honestly, very much uninteresting, if I'm honest. I just couldn't wait for this book to finish by a certain point. Like I said, sections 2 and 3 I could have done without. The first section was absolutely beautiful. There is obviously so much scope to go in depth with all of this, you know, the fact that she's writing about pandemic alongside the fact that we're in a pandemic, but I think in her talk she said she'd already started researching this in 2017, and she said the fact that we were obviously in a pandemic didn't shape or change her writing. Good for her, I suppose. There's so much to, I think, go in on this about. There are so many topics and themes that you can pick out, and I think you can only do that if you really like the book. I just thought it was okay. I would not read this again, whereas A Little Life I would read again. I've already read it twice. I would read it again. This I would not read again. But I didn't dislike it. Like I said, I love her writing. It was enjoyable to see her new work. I will be definitely picking up her first book because I actually haven't picked that up, and I will pick up anything else that she writes in the future. I really liked her interview. I thought she was really witty. She came across very I wouldn't say clever, like she just came across as very self-aware, and not in a very assholey way either. But I'm glad that reading experience is done. I think this has taken me 2 weeks to finish, so I'm looking forward to just reading something else that isn't about Davids and Charleses and Edwards and just having the same names but repeated in a different thing. One thing I will say is about the Hawaiian thing that runs through this. She did do a lot of I think research around Hawaiian traditions and things like that, so that was actually quite insightful to see, because I think I mentioned it in an earlier clip, but I just learned a lot from it. Even though this is fiction, it's definitely very much rooted in facts, so enjoyed that. But yeah, that is the end of this reading vlog. I think it's going to be really long. I've only edited the first half at this point. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have read this book, let me know what you think. If you haven't, I don't know why you perhaps watch this video. Maybe just have no interest in reading it at all. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in another video. Bye.